and I am so thrilled this morning to welcome Judy Burnham. Judy is the founder and principal of Divine Mercy Catholic School in St. John, New Brunswick. She'll be sharing reflections on the heart of a small Catholic school. Over the past 20 years, Judy has been involved at every level of the school, including washing floors. This is a great opportunity for those of us from the funded and partially funded provinces to gain some insights into what it is truly like to be part of unfunded Catholic schools in Canada. And I want to just say welcome, Judy, and really appreciate you being willing to share your story with us today. So Judy, please take it away.
Thank you, thank you. So good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to share a little bit of my story of Catholic education over the last 20 some years. I'm Judy Burnham, and I live in St. John, New Brunswick. And it's in New Brunswick is on the far eastern part of Canada, and we have sort of this saying in the Maritimes that people in most of Canada think that Eastern Canada is Montreal, or maybe even Toronto. And we're 1,200 miles east of Montreal, 1,800 east of Toronto. So sometimes we feel a little bit forgotten in our little part of the country, but we have some beautiful, beautiful scenery here, beautiful down-home love and acceptance of people, and even a few Catholic schools. So we will, I'll be sharing a little bit about that as we go along. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. I was born here in St. John, and my parents came from rural places of New Brunswick, two rural places, two different rural places of St. John in the early 1900s. And they were both sent, my mom and my dad, sent to a TB, tuberculosis sanatorium in early in their lives. They were both in their early 20s, and they were basically sent there to die because there was no cure for tuberculosis at that time. And there they met, and there they fell in love, and there was a cure for TB, and they got married, and my brother and sister and I grew up in a family that was very grateful for life and very filled with faith. I don't remember a time in my life when I didn't have faith. And I don't remember a time in my life that I didn't want to be a teacher. So I guess I'm in the right place. So after high school, I went to university, got a teaching degree, and spent 7 years working in high schools in St. John. So after that time, while I was working, I met my husband, Jim, and over the next 10 years, had our children, 5 boys and 2 girls. It was a bit of a whirlwind. When I brought my last 2 babies home from the hospital, they're twins, boy and girl twins. The others were 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So we had a busy little home. And shortly afterwards, we decided that we would homeschool. And so our children stayed at home, learned about the faith, learned about Catholic values and about family values. And it was very good looking back. It was very challenging, but it was very good. And it also afforded me the opportunity to teach every grade level from kindergarten to the end of high school. And so that was a wonderful thing. And so we have a picture there of my family. It's a couple of kids short because we have 13 grandchildren now, and this one only has 11, I believe, or maybe 10. And but these people that you see in the picture are the delight of our lives, our children and our grandchildren. And they're all grown up now, between ages 28 and 38. And except for one, our daughter's sister, Angela, who's a Franciscan sister, they all live close to home. They all come home for supper on Sunday, which is just a delight for us. So when I was thinking about what to do with this talk about my last 20 years of education, I immediately thought of a scripture. And the scripture is from the Gospel of John. It's one of the post-resurrection stories. It's in chapter 21. And it's where the apostles are upset because Jesus has just died, their leader, their Lord. They decided to go back and do what they thought they could do well, and that was fishing. And you know the story. They fished all night. They caught nothing. And then there was this stranger on the shore who hollers out to them, "Put your net out on the right side." Imagine, put your net out on the right side when you've been fishing all night on all sides of the boat, I'm sure, and caught nothing. But they did what he said, they obeyed, and they caught more fish than they knew what to do with. This is the way I picture that boat. I picture them hauling in the fish, the net almost breaking from the amount of fish in it. And John, who was the youngest of them all, was focused on the stranger on the shore. And as he looked at that stranger, he recognized, it is the Lord. It has to be the Lord. Because who else would ask us to do the impossible? Who else would compel us to obey a request so ridiculous as to put our net out again? Who else would take something every day like fishing and make it a miraculous event? It's got to be the Lord. And over the last 20 years of Catholic education, with no assistance from the government, very little support from most of our diocesan priests, seeing countless ridiculous and outrageous expectations made of us, and an equal number of miraculous results, I find myself standing in my boat and looking to the shore and seeing the stranger too, and saying, it's the Lord. It's the Lord who has done all of this. So back to my home story. After I had homeschooled for 10 years, and my youngest 3 were still in grades 5 and 8, I heard about a group of people in St. John who wanted to start a Catholic school. Now, like many places, we had Catholic schools in St. John, run by Sisters of Charity, an order here in St. John. And over years, when they eventually retired, the Catholic schools lost their Catholicism. And they became very secular until eventually there was no trace of Catholicism in them at all. Now I'm hearing that there's a group of people who want to start a Catholic school again, and wondering whether we can do it with lay people. And so because these people who were joining to talk about starting a school were friends of mine, friends of ours, they asked me if I would be the principal because they knew I was a teacher. They knew I had taught every grade because of the homeschooling experience. And although I knew I was not at all qualified for something like this, I was kind of interested in what they were doing. And so my husband and I both started to go to their meetings. We had no experience at all in how to start a school or any of the legal implications that it would take. We had no idea if anybody in the city would be interested, outside of our group, of putting their kids in such a school. We had no idea if our bishop would accept such a school in the city or allow us to call it Catholic. We had no money, and we knew that if we accepted money from the government or applied to have money from the government to start up a school, that we'd be kind of opening up a door to be mandated as to what we could teach and what we couldn't teach. And we had no building, no place to have a school. So that's where we started. But this little group that was started, they were very united in their hopes of what God was going to do. And we knew that if it was God's will, it was going to happen. And if it wasn't God's will, we didn't want it to happen. So that's where we were when we began. The first meeting was held on Divine Mercy Sunday, so it seemed to us to be a fitting name for a proposed school. We certainly needed the mercy. So we met for about 3 years, praying and learning to trust and doing our research. and meanwhile, building a community of hope. During those 3 years, doors began to open for us. Turned out that our bishop loved the idea of a Catholic school and gave us full permission to call it Catholic. We applied for charitable status, which apparently sometimes can take a long, long time to come in, and we received it in record time, and money started pouring in, people that wanted to support this endeavor. People actually heard about our meetings and said, if you get going, I would like to put my child in that school. That kind of amazed me. I thought, who would put their child in a school that isn't even established yet? But people were doing it. And just months before we thought, we might be close to being able to open in the fall, a priest came to us. He was from a Redemptorist parish in the center of St. John and said, we will give you 2 rooms for a year, 2 years in the basement of our church for 1 year to start your school. So we didn't know much about what we were doing, but we recognized this as being quite a catch. So many things were working in our favor. There was no doubt in our minds that it was the Lord. So we opened the doors of Divine Mercy Catholic School in September of 2003 with 25 students and 2 teachers in 2 rooms of a damp basement, and we were ecstatic. We had begun. The configuration of the classrooms were myself and another teacher. The other teacher taught kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3 all together in one room. And I taught grade 5, 6, 7, and 8. Luckily, there was no grade 4 that year, and we each had 4 grades to maneuver. But we were ecstatic. We were really living on a shoestring, no extras at all. We washed the floors on the weekends. We cleaned the bathrooms every day. The teachers' salaries were very low because we wanted people to be able to afford our tuition. And this kept us very dependent on God for everything. When in need, we went to prayer and we asked for His grace to be able to get through whatever it was that we were in. We couldn't boast of anything except that God was very good to us. Every day there seemed to be outrageous requests for us, like cast your net on the right side when you've been fishing all night and catching nothing. So our little group of people who started the vision of Catholic education became our board of directors. And we were really united on a lot of fronts. We weren't interested in just having another school. No matter how scholarly, no matter how many students it attracted, if it wasn't authentically Catholic, it wasn't what we were looking for. There were lots of good schools with great academic standards, and that was a criteria for us. We really wanted high academic standards, high behavioral standards. But if it didn't have the wisdom of the Catholic Church behind it, we felt that it wouldn't be a Catholic school. We had dreams that this school that was named for Divine Mercy would show mercy to its students, that it had to be a safe haven for students rather, who were bullied or had low self-esteem or who really needed a place where they felt safe. We wanted a school where faith was lived and mentored and taught and caught and modeled and witnessed to. A place where Mass was celebrated and where the sacraments were presented and prayer was easily voiced and freely voiced by our students, and where virtues were cherished. Although we wanted it to be authentically and solidly Catholic, we agreed that we would accept students from other faiths or of no faith at all, because we knew that part of our mandate was to evangelize. Physical activity and sports teams were really important to us. Having classes in art and music and the classics in literature, because we really wanted to educate the whole child, body, mind, and spirit. Our first year ended and we moved into another little rectory for 4 years or so. We cleaned and we shoveled and we mowed, and our numbers grew. And then 4 years later, we received the gift of a lifetime. It was a 4-story Victorian-style rectory in the heart of St. John with a beautifully treed, fenced-in yard, a gymnasium, a ball field, and a chapel on the 3rd floor. This had been the Redemptorist parish who had invited us in 5 years earlier. We returned home and we just loved it. The diocese renovated it for us and we worked out a rental agreement with them. And Bishop Harris allowed us to have the Blessed Sacrament in the chapel. So we knew that we would be bringing our students into the presence of the Lord every single day. This certainly was the Lord's gift to us. It was the Lord. And this has been our home for 13 years now. I'm the principal. I teach in middle school. Right now, in my present class, I have 18 boys and 2 girls. Ask me if I'm ready for a summer vacation. Before we started the school, I had worked in putting on youth retreats. And for 10 years, we put 2 retreats a year on for young people 14 and up in the Atlantic region. And if I learned anything at all from that experience of youth, of talking to hundreds and hundreds of youth about their experience on these retreats, it was that young people don't go for watered down faith. It means nothing to them. They're created for greatness. And that's what they want. That's what they expect from the gospel and from the Lord himself. So they welcomed the truth, even though in this culture they're growing up in, it was very countercultural, but they wanted nothing less. This was the knowledge in my heart, and I was adamant that in our school, truth and the wisdom of the church would not be shied away from. If Jesus called himself the truth, and if we were to welcome him into our school, his teachings would not be squashed or diluted. There's a poster that I found that I have framed and put up at the entryway to our school, and it says, "Be it known to all who enter here that Christ is the reason for this school. He is the unseen but ever-present teacher in its classes. He is the model of its faculty and the inspiration of its students." In our first year as a school, typically, we had noticed that a lot of the students who came to the school who were not Catholic were so interested in the truth that we were presenting about the Catholic faith. They wanted more. Many of them wanted to become Catholic. Typically, they would come to me and they would say, "Mrs. Burnham, how do I become Catholic? I'm not Catholic. My family doesn't go to church or goes to a different church. I want to be Catholic. I want to receive the bread of life. What do I do? Will you help me? Will you talk to my parents?" And so students like these ones that you see on the slide, these ones became baptized even just a few weeks ago in our chapel at school. And last night, 3 of them made their first Holy Communion. That's just from our middle school. And our students, of course, who are Catholic are receiving the sacraments as well. And all of this, the hunger for truth is so evident. And we just have to say, it is the Lord. Truth draws. It draws our heart because truth is Jesus. In that same resurrection story that I spoke about earlier, Jesus asked Peter, and he asks us Catholic educators as well, "Do you love me? And if you do, feed my lambs." Who has a clearer mandate to feed the Lord's lambs out of love of God than Catholic school teachers? And keeping our schools staffed with people who could feed the lambs, teach and love and practice the Catholic faith has always been very key to us. In order for us to hope to pass on the Catholic faith to our students, our teachers have to be strong in their Catholic faith and willing to pass it on, to witness to God's goodness in their own lives. And the church actually teaches that Catholic school teachers have a mandate to evangelize. We've discovered that well-educated, well-read teachers with many degrees and an abundance of excellence in teaching ideas and workshops and lots of money to work with are certainly professional in their work, and they do a lot of good in educating our young people. But like John and Peter and the boys that were in the boat, they were professional, but they risked fishing all night without a catch if they didn't have their eyes riveted on the stranger on the shore. You can't give what you don't personally have. Our teachers at Divine Mercy Catholic School work for less than half of what the public school offers its teachers. We tell our teachers that we're trying to entice to come and teach with us that you'll work for half salary, half missionary work. And that's all we can afford to pay them at this stage of the game. One year when our student enrollment was down, quite unexpectedly, we had to ask the teachers if they would take a further 15% reduction in their pay. They cheerfully and readily agreed. From that year on, our enrollment has steadily increased. We're currently at almost full capacity at 110. Somehow we've operated for 20 years, never lacking a teacher of this quality. One would think that there's a stranger on the shore directing us as to where to find these teachers. This past Christmas, there was one of our teachers who had to stop working. And so I went home for my Christmas break thinking, where am I going to find a new teacher in 2 short weeks? And that evening, the very first day of my Christmas break, I got a phone call from a teacher who had taught with us before, but had left to go and discern a vocation with the Dominican sisters. And she had decided after several months of discernment that it was not for her, and she had come home, unbeknownst to me. And that night she called me and she said, "You wouldn't happen to be looking for a teacher, would you?" I said, "Oh yes, come along." And so, again, it is the Lord. Several years ago, we were trying to come up with something special for our Advent season in school. And one of our staff members, Catherine, who a lot of you know, came up with the idea of having every teacher think of a virtue that would go with every student in their classroom. And every day of Advent, we would gather together in the chapel, and the teachers would call up the student and present them with a virtue, which was a little ornament, a little wooden ornament that has a virtue and its meaning listed on it. And then that student very proudly would go and hang it on our Advent tree. It's one of the most life-enriching traditions that we had at our school, and we've done it for several years now. Catholic schools serve the mission of the church, the body of Christ on earth. So we knew that we couldn't just keep focused on ourselves. And one of the things that we did as a bit of a project was to honor the priests. So we have several priests who come celebrate Mass in our school, and the students wanted to honor them with the little ornaments of virtue that they had learned are so precious to themselves. And the students were asked this question: what virtues would our priests need to have in order to be good priests? And this is what they came up with. This little video was created.
A priest definitely needs courage. It's one that you never give up, even when it's hard. That's what priests all need together.
To give out is a gift of courtesy. And courtesy.
Dear priests, each year during the Advent season, DMCS has a special tradition called Advent Virtues. In the morning, when the students and staff gather in the chapel, every teacher takes time to describe a virtue that they see in each one of their students. We spent our Advent affirming one another and naming the beautiful virtues we see in each other. Each student has virtues which shine in our school halls every day and make our DMCS family a little brighter. This year, we are thinking about you, our priests. We see many virtues in you, and we wanted to thank you for inspiring virtues in us. We wanted to tell you that we see light shining within you, and because of you, our lives are brighter.
A priest should have the virtue of perseverance. My name is Christian, and I'm in grade 7. I think the priests need the virtue of courage.
My name is Christina, and I'm in grade 3, and I think most priests have the virtue of kindness. I think that they have that virtue because they're always so loving and giving, and I just think they're so kind.
My name is Abby. I'm in grade 7. And I think a priest would need love to bring us the bread of life.
Priests have the virtue of bravery.
Most of the priests I met had the virtues of wisdom and patience.
My name is Jude. I'm in grade 3, and I think a priest should have kindness.
I think that priests have the virtue of assertiveness because they have to say what they believe in God to other people.
My name is Logan, and I'm in grade 6, and I think that a priest would need holiness and godliness.
Priests need helpfulness. They help the MCS with Mass, and they bring us Jesus.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I think priests have the virtue of friendliness because when I went to confession once, I was really nervous and shy, but the priest was so nice and friendly, and it just made me feel so much better and more confident.
Hi, my name is Marianne Dovelstein, and I'm in grade 8, and I think priests today would need the virtue of courage because it's really hard for priests to just leave their whole lives behind and go and give up their lives to God.
God, pray. Sacrifice. Kindness, loveliness, and joyfulness. Dear priest, we love you.
You guys are our heroes.
I love you. Dear priest, we love you.
We need you.
You guys are our heroes.
We need you.
You guys are my heroes. Thank you.
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 On this Feast of the Holy Family, we want you to know that we appreciate your priesthood and your fatherhood here in our diocese. We see your sacrifice and your yes to the church, and you inspire in each of us a desire to know and to love Christ. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
So the honoring of our priests, is very, very dear to our heart because, as I say to the kids after every Mass that we have, let's thank our priest because without him, we are not able to receive Jesus in the Eucharist, and that is the source and summit of our life. So Mother Teresa, always a favorite of mine. I remember being touched by something that I read that she had said many years ago in response to a reporter who was asking her, how can you work in such long hours in such dire conditions? And her response was so beautiful. She said, souls are costly. We have to work hard and not count the cost to reach souls. I want to tell you a little bit about Aiden. Aiden and his dad came to our school when Aiden was in grade 5. Aiden is the one with the glasses in the back. And they wanted to know if we had room for him in our school. I meet with every family that comes into our school, and I kind of keep one ear open to hear whether we would be a good fit for them and whether they would be a good fit for us. And this is Aiden's story. Aiden was whispering the day that I met him. I later found out that he had lost his ability to speak because of severe bullying in his previous school. Aiden also had a non-stop dry cough, really non-stop. Every few seconds, all day long, Aiden coughed. And it intensified if he was nervous. It was a nervous reaction that was caused by acute insecurity from bullying. Also, Aiden couldn't see the normal textbook size print. And as time went on, I discovered that even though Aiden wore glasses and saw 20/20 with the glasses on, he had developed a defense mechanism that he unconsciously created because in his mind he was thinking, if I can't see it, no one can call me stupid for not knowing how to do it or make fun. The saddest part of Aiden's story was that he had been bullied both by students and by teachers. He trusted no one, and he harbored a lot of anger. I knew his issues were really beyond what we could accommodate, but something in my heart told me that he needed us, or maybe we needed him. There was no room in the grade 5 class where he wanted to go, but I was teaching grade 6, 7 that year. And over the years, we have taught our students many things, but particularly to be very accepting of new students who come to our school. And I knew that this particular class would take him under their wing. So Aiden joined our class. Very soon it was evident that this persistent cough of his was a huge distraction. So we had to set him up in an adjacent office. And either I would go in there to work with him after I'd got my own class working, or one of the students would go in and sit with him and help him. And it wasn't my aim to impart a lot of academics to him this particular year, which is why it didn't matter if he was in a grade 6, 7 classroom. He just needed to feel accepted. And that was a tall order, come to find out. His worst day was a few weeks in. I knew that he would have to go through a period where he tested us and he would try to find out whether he would really be accepted. This was one of those days. Another student was in his little office helping him with his math. And Aiden really enjoyed that. He loved it when another student was in there. It really built him up. And we had photocopied the print of the math textbook, so the letters were literally this big, and he felt like he could read some of it. So at one point, I went into the little office and I asked the other student to go back to the classroom because he had to work on some work of his own math. And Aiden got angry at that because he wanted him to stay. But I insisted, and Aiden threw a fit. He couldn't yell because all he could do was whisper, but he started throwing things off the desk, throwing his books down, kicking things over, and he ran to a desk in the corner of the room and hid underneath it. It just reminded me for all the world of a little wounded animal of some sort. And from there, he reached out anything that was on the floor or nearby and would throw it at me. So meanwhile, I got in touch with another teacher who called his dad to come for him. But while we were sitting in that room, and Aiden was under the desk in the far corner of the room, I kept telling him, Aiden, you're loved here. You're accepted here. I'm not going to kick you out of the school because you're throwing things at me. You just need to learn that you're loved. So his dad came, picked him up, took him home. And the next day he came in and he apologized. He was still coughing. He was still a little bit angry, but less angry, and was a little bit more compliant after that. On good days, he was starting to know that he was accepted and he liked it. Fast forward a few months, and Aiden's cough started to decrease in frequency. One day, and I remember the day vividly, he got through an entire day of school without coughing. All the students noticed, we all noticed, and a lot of high fives and fist pumps went around the room that day. Then there came a day about a year later that Aiden was lined up outside waiting to come in the morning with the rest of his class. And I heard somebody say in a voice that I did not recognize, "Good morning, Mrs. Burnham." And the students were all smiling and laughing. They said, "Aiden found his voice. Aiden can speak." And it was Aiden who had said it. And as the whole group of them filed by me, I grabbed Aiden and gave him a hug, and he hugged me back. And he was smiles ear to ear that he had found his voice. And miraculously, his vision came back. He was able to see the textbooks. He didn't really admit it, but he was able to see the textbooks before and just thought he couldn't. And now he thought he could. So now Aiden is in grade 8. He's finishing up, getting ready for high school, finishing up middle school. Our high school starts at grade 9. He's worked really hard this past year, and his grades are near the top of his class. He's well loved and accepted by the students in the class, and his self-confidence is through the roof. The other day I was complimenting him on something that he had done, and he said with a little smirk in his face, "That's sure better than throwing things at you from under a desk." I said, yes, and he had never mentioned it before, but he hadn't forgotten. He knew where he was coming from. So stories like that, no doubt, it's the Lord. Yes, the Lord has to use people in order to touch the people in his life, but it's able to happen. Right? He's the one that's behind it all, and it's well worth the cost. The Catholic faith is very much under attack these days. Every Catholic knows that. Many have left the faith or no longer believe that the Catholic Church teaches what it has taught for centuries and centuries. In dark times like these, centuries ago, monasteries would gather families, Catholic families, and they would secretly teach them the faith in a hidden way, teach them to preserve the faith that had gone on for centuries. Same thing happened when John Paul II was in Poland and the Nazis invaded, and the fear was that Catholicism would be eradicated. And he found ways to gather people in a secret place to teach through storytelling and through drama and through all kinds of things that preserved the faith. And in these very uncertain times that we live in, I really think that Catholic schools can do the same thing. We can be little havens where there's a rich heritage of our faith and where it's protected and cherished and passed on to our students or whoever comes to the school. It's not so much that we as Catholic schools have a mission to do something. We are a mission. We are a beacon to those who are hungry, those who are looking for a safe place to be, those who are looking for faith, a light in the darkness, a place for their souls to be filled, because our society doesn't provide much of soul filling these days. A place where the name of Jesus can be glorified. Is it too much to ask? Yeah, it probably seems so. In this culture that we're in, it probably seems like that's too much to ask. But as outrageous as it is in this present culture, we have the same stranger standing on the shore, gazing at us and allowing us to do what it takes to be able to save souls. We have a beautiful Bishop Christian Riesbeck, and he comes to our school often. In fact, sometimes he invites himself to come because he says the students feed his soul, so he likes to come. And every chance he gets, he says to the students, "God loves you so much. He's crazy about you," he says emphatically. And of course, it's true. Christ is very much in love, not just with our students, but with all of us. And how can you not fall in love with someone who's crazy about you? And they come to trust him. They come to love him. They come to feel safe in a place where they can talk to him in prayer in front of all of us. And it creates in our school sort of an atmosphere, an environment of faith where it's very safe to talk about the Lord. At the end of each of our sessions that we have in the chapel in the mornings, we say, okay, who do we need to pray for today? And the hands raise up from grade 8 down to the kindergarten kids. Nobody, I don't think there's a student in the school who would be afraid to put their hand up and ask for something. They say, you know, I saw an accident on the way to school. I want to pray for those people. Or my grandpa just got COVID, or my dog is sick, or something. They have freedom to pray. Because when active faith is lived out daily, an atmosphere of faith is created. Students feel free to speak of faith and of our Lord and of the saints and the sacraments. One little boy named Jimmy was in our school a few years ago. And when he came to our school, his family had no faith background at all. And so when he sat in the chapel and he heard things about God and the saints, he had wide-eyed curiosity. And a few months into school, his mom told us that the night before they were sitting at the supper table and they somebody mentioned something about God. And Jimmy said, God, I know him. He goes to my school. And that just shows that he was very aware that God was present, right? Even though he didn't have the theology behind it. He kind of went on to say, I'm not quite sure what grade he's in, but I think he lives in the gym. So he sort of had it half right. So the story that I talked about earlier, the same John who stood in the boat and looked at the stranger on the shore was the same John who was under the cross and who was given the tremendous privilege of receiving Mary from Jesus. And we have that privilege as well. We, along with John, have Mary in our lives. And so about 6 years ago, about 9 years ago, at the beginning of May, I was standing in front of the school body and I was telling them, you know, this is the month of Mary and we should be asking Mary for things this month, you know, things that are really important, people that you know need prayer and so on, and we should bring that to Mary. And so I said, well, what should we ask Mary for? Well, let me just backtrack a minute. When we moved into this building that we're in now, it had to be renovated and it had to be brought up to code. And so a very extensive and expensive sprinkler system was put through at the school. But because our gymnasium is a separate building from the school, it didn't get the sprinkler system. So when the fire marshal came in to make sure that everything was up to code before the students came in, he met with me personally and he said, everything is fine in the school, but that gym does not have a sprinkler system. You cannot take the students there. So it was just no uncertain terms. Can you ever bring students into that school? He was very emphatic about it. So the sprinkler system for the gym would have cost $75,000. And it needed a new floor. The floor was $40,000. So it was totally out of our range of even thinking about. But there was a lady who had come to us just before this May when I was speaking to the students and said, I have $40,000 that I would like to give you to redo the floor of the gym. And we explained to her, well, we can't use the gym because it doesn't have a sprinkler system. So she said, well, I'm going to put that money in an account. I don't want to use the money for anything else. And if comes the time that you are able to use that gym, use that money to do the floor. So because our board of directors knew that $40,000 was sitting in an account, they thought, let's take one trip back to the fire marshal who had told us that we couldn't go in the gym. So back to the chapel. I say to the children, what should we pray for? It's the month of Mary. And one little boy puts his hand up and he says, we need to pray that we can start using the gym. I don't know what the look was on my face, but inside I was squirming because I knew at the end of this month, I'm going to have to say to these students, well, I don't know, must not have been God's will or something, because we can't go in that gym. It still hasn't got a sprinkler. But when the board of directors person went back to the same fire marshal who had told me in no uncertain terms, can you go in that gym? He said, how's the school going? The answer was fine, going well. Just want to talk to you about the gym. And he said, yeah, you're not using the gym? And we said, no, not using the gym. And he said, well, I don't know why not. I grew up in that parish. And he said, we use that gym all the time. Nothing wrong with it. You start using that gym. Same guy that had talked to me 4 years earlier. So I went back to the gym, or back to the chapel rather, the next day. And I said, guess what? Our Mother Mary has seen fit to answer that prayer. And it just built faith. I try to tell the students that story every beginning of May, because it's nothing short of a miracle, right? That it happened. We've been using the gym ever since, and we had the $40,000 to fix the floor. So everything worked out in our favor. So it's one of those things that, you don't understand it. You can't figure it out. It's just miraculous. It's just what the Lord does. We call it our gym miracle. One little guy, when I went back to tell them that Mary had performed this miracle for us and that we were able to use the gym, put his hand up and said, oh, darn, we should have asked for a pool. Anyway, we got the gym, and that's a beautiful thing. But I don't want to give the impression that life at Divine Mercy is always heavenly, because it's not. Parents get angry at us for things that they think we should be doing differently, and students argue with each other, and staff get frustrated at the students, and students get frustrated at the staff, and teachers get burned out, and students get suspended, and all of that happens. But even at the times when we feel stretched to the limit and we meet opposition at every turn, we can still say it is the Lord, because he allows those times for us to grow in virtue. And it's not when we're going through good times that we grow. It's when we're going through difficult times and we still trust in him. Is it a tall order? Yeah, it's a tall order. Most days, pretty much impossible to be able to see Jesus in the eyes of our students who are being disobedient or who are being rude or who are not listening. It's really hard, but it's not impossible. Nothing is impossible with God. With the apostles in the boat, it was when they obeyed Jesus, listened to him, that they had more fish than they could even imagine. Depending on God's grace is actually a very good thing to do. It's called humility. Not having enough money is really not a bad thing. It gives us an opportunity to have to trust in God. What is sad is not having enough faith to trust in God's plan. Not having enough love to trust that we can see Jesus in our students. We're always, it seems, needy, never feeling self-sufficient. As Jesus said on earth so many times, just be small. Unless you become like a little child, always needy, you're not going to see heaven. So somehow I suspect that our need for his help kind of draws compassion from him. I pray that all of our schools that bear the name Catholic listen for the stranger's voice, obey his commands, create a space where his lambs can be safe and fed. Although he's the unseen guest in our school, who silently and mysteriously weaves our everyday lives, he wants each one of us to stand up in our boats and to gaze at the stranger on the shore and to say with John, it is the Lord. It was a beautiful little line by Thomas Merton that my daughter Catherine said to me just before we started this taping today. And it refers so much to that stranger on the shore looking at us. And it says, his eyes, which are the eyes of truth, are fixed on my heart. Now, I know he was looking at John that day, but today he's looking at me. And every day he looks at each one of us and he directs us and he directs our paths. So I don't think it could be said any better than the way John Paul II said. He was speaking to, I believe, a group of Catholic teachers in Newfoundland several years ago. But he says today, young people are buffeted in every direction. Isn't it true? By loud and competing claims on their attention and allegiance. From around the world, they hear daily messages of conflict and hostility and greed and injustice and poverty and despair. And amidst this social turmoil, young people are eager to find solid and enduring values, which can give them meaning and purpose to their lives. They are searching for a firm place, a high ground on which to stand. They seek a sense of direction, a goal which will give them meaning and purpose in their lives. And the gospel tells us, John Paul says, the gospel tells us where the high ground is to be found. It is beside our Lord, sharing in his strength and his love, responding eagerly and generously to his challenge, to love and serve him as he has loved and served us. And who can show young people the way to that secure place, to that dynamic and fulfilling life better than the teachers to whom they are looking for guidance? No one else will ever be where you are. No one else will ever have the opportunity that you have to accompany students in this search for truth, to foster in them a thirst for justice and an appreciation for the goodness of God, to lead them patiently and lovingly in their journey of faith. Young people are hungry today for truth and justice because they're hungry for God. To respond to that hunger is the highest calling of a Christian Catholic educator. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. And if there are any questions, I would be glad to field any of them.
Please raise your hand if you have any questions for Judy. I'm not seeing any at the minute. Let's give it, oh, here we go. Now, Morgan, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself. Please just accept my prompt. Okay, let's try one more time. Okay, let's try Allison. Allison, please go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go.
Hi.
Hello.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for that presentation. My son also listened in and he said to me, "Oh, Mom, I want to go to that school." Just so you know,
Beautiful.
We're based in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, so that'll give you some context. My question to you is if okay, so if the government of New Brunswick all of a sudden just said to you, "Yes, go ahead, we're going to fund your schools," do you think you would be able to continue with the culture that you've created there? And then I also have a second part to that question.
Mm-hmm.
In communities where our schools are publicly funded and at times perhaps we feel that sometimes things are being a little watered down, what advice could you give people as parents to continue to really advocate for quality Catholic education?
Yeah, very nice question. Thank you. Well, for the first one, boy, it would sure be enticing to say yes to some government funding, just because there's always needs, there's always things we would like to do, first and foremost, to increase the salaries of the teachers, especially for young teachers who come into the school. Those of us that are older and married, we have an income from our husbands, but if a single teacher comes, which brings a lot of vitality to the school when they do, they find it really hard to make ends meet on what we give them. But we would have to be extremely clear that we would teach in the way that we're teaching now, with the subjects that we are teaching now, with no strings attached. And I don't think that the government would really go for that. When I see more and more, year after year, different things coming out mandated by the government of New Brunswick, I don't know if it's the same all the way across Canada, but I just think, whoa, we don't want to be a part. We don't want that to indicate what we can do and what we can't do. So we would say no. We would say no. We couldn't do that. As far as, you know, other schools, you know, if you have the name of Catholic on your school, it means something. And if the teaching is watered down, then it's giving a wrong idea of what Catholicism is. It's losing the identity of what a Catholic school is supposed to be. So we have a church, we have a 2,000-year-old church that is behind us in its rich teaching and in its wisdom. And unless we preserve that in whatever way we can, and I don't really know how it works in the public Catholic school board, but within the school, you know, that atmosphere of faith and love and protection and of solid Catholic teaching can happen. Mostly through prayer. That's how it's going to happen. Engaging the stranger on the shore to help you to know how to do that. But it's got to be a requirement, right? It's got to be something that's very valued by the teachers that are in the school and the principal and so on. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you, Allison. Please raise your hand if you do have a question or any comments for Judy. In the meantime, there are some in the Q&A box that I want to read out to you, Judy.
Okay.
We have from Mary Ann Penner. Thank you, Judy. A beautiful presentation, rich in faith and trust in God. A lesson we all need to learn and act on as trustees and administrators in our fully funded Catholic schools. We have a comment from Aline Mutala. Thank you for the excellent presentation and keep up the wonderful work. Blessings, Arlene from Edmonton Catholic. And then we have one from Hudson Bible. No question, but wanted to express my gratitude for your amazing presentation. God bless you.
Thank you very much. It means a lot to me.
Please raise your hand if there are any outstanding questions or any comments. I'm not seeing any at the minute. Oh. Teresita, go ahead.
Hi, Judy. Thank you so much. Like everyone else is probably feeling right now, you've just been so inspiring. And it's, yeah, I come from Manitoba and we're partially funded here. And it's a constant monitoring and constant watching of how we are able to say no to some of the things that are being mandated to our curriculum. And it is a challenge. But I really am inspired by your idea of prayer, right? Because that is part of it. One of the things that we really also, our structure is a little bit different because we're part of a federation of other independent schools. And so we have the strength, but our main thing, of course, is parental choice. Like that's really important to have that choice so that if the government respects that, then, you know, you have a little bit more leeway, but it is a challenge. And so it's just so inspiring to hear the way you speak about, you know, it's God's will, right? That, you know, the Lord is there for us and he'll give us the strength. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And Beverly, if you'd like to go ahead as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so very much, Judy. I'm from Ontario. And the message you gave us today, I think will resonate across Canada. And I think every trustee across Canada should hear what you have done for Catholic education out east. You're an amazing woman. And I would say you're very close to St. Teresa of Calcutta with what you're doing. Yeah, amazing. And I just want to say thank you so very much. Here in Ontario, we are fully funded. So often we don't understand the challenges that are faced by some of our Catholic schools and our Catholic families who are struggling to give their children a Catholic education because ours is fully funded. So please keep up the good work. We in Ontario are continually advocating and working on Toonies for Tuition, and I know they are greatly appreciated, and we will continue the fight to equalize Catholic education across Canada. So thank you very, very much for your words. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome.
Thanks, Beverly. I'm just going to go back to the Q&A box for a quick second. We have a question from Carla Smiley. Thank you for the amazing and hope-filled work you are undertaking. Do you have an elected board of trustees?
We have, they're not elected. They're just a board of, basically started out with that board that was around 20 years ago. And we're very, very blessed to be able to choose who goes on our board. They're not elected as such. We look for people with the values that we have to continue the vision of the school. And so that's where our board comes from, and we protect it very carefully.
Thank you. A comment also from Michael Ouellette. Fantastic presentation, and we are so blessed in Alberta. We have a comment from Philippe Richard. A very beautiful experience to share with all the Catholic schools of the world. Thank you so much. And from Eugenia Pagnotta. No question, excellent reminder of what a gift Catholic education is and the necessity to protect this gift. Agree, every trustee, educator, leader should hear what you have done. You are an inspiration to all, and your message is extremely important. Not seeing anything else. Please do raise your hand or type into the Q&A if you have any comments or questions for Judy. Okay.
Well, I don't see any more questions coming in, and I see a lot of people have already said a lot of my thoughts to Judy. I knew you wouldn't disappoint at all, and I think Cardinal Collins is going to have some big shoes to fill following your presentation. I won't tell him that. Hopefully he's not listening in. I really appreciate you joining us today and taking the time. I'm glad that your wonderful daughter, Catherine, recommended you as a speaker today. Really love the Advent virtues, and I think they are all virtues from your little video that we should all strive to have and to share with others. I think I'm going to take that back and use it with my own board. But just really appreciate you reminding us of just how important the work is in Catholic education, and that love for all of our students is so important. And having God, whether he's in the gym or whether he's in wherever he is in our schools, he needs to be present always, and our students need to know that he is present and in their hearts as well. So thank you so much for joining us. It was a wonderful presentation, and really appreciate the message that you shared with all of us today. It's still morning for me, so I'll say this morning. I know it's the afternoon for you, but yeah, it's still my morning. So thank you so much.